shade of my skin. Only X color to my tears. Oh, that splashed against my hollow bone, that rocks my soul. Looking back over my false dreams that I once knew, wondering why my blacker dreams will never come true. Is it because I'm black? Somebody tell me, what can I do? Something is holding me back. Is it because I'm black?
Good evening, everyone. Hope all is well. Junior Radigan right here with you. I had to tell you the story that I read about online about a man named Rashad West, directly linked to the killing of George Floyd, that has changed the mentality of so many millions of people, not just in this country, all over the world. The protests that followed, the awakening that followed. George Floyd was killed just over a month ago. This time a month ago, people were in the streets constantly. Minneapolis was exploding, and the rest of the country was about to follow suit that following weekend. So who is Rashad West, and why is he important? Why is he in the conversation now all of a sudden? All right, let me take you back to when we saw the video for George Floyd. That happened on a Monday night, Memorial Day Monday. And the video was shot by a young lady by the name of Darnella Fraser, who posted it on Facebook. When that video came out, and everybody saw it within 24 hours later, by Tuesday night, everybody had seen it. People were in the streets of Minneapolis. At first, the Minneapolis police, which doesn't get talked about much now, said that the victim was in fact dead, and the victim was resisting arrest. Now, with the footage from Darnella Fraser, it was clear that he wasn't resisting arrest. It wasn't 100% clear that he was handcuffed, though. But after a while, it was clear that he was handcuffed, too. But that still wasn't going to be anything to talk about in court of law, unless you had a lot of witnesses, etc., etc. So this is where Rashad West comes into the story. Who is Rashad West, and why he should be considered a hero? That's Rashad West right there in the photo. And what you see behind him is an Asian restaurant called the Dragon Walk. Not only does he work in there, Rashad West, a black man, owns an Asian restaurant. Where is that located? In Minneapolis. And why is it important? Because that restaurant is on the corner across the street from where George Floyd went to buy something and allegedly gave them a fake $20 bill, came back to his car, which was parked on that side street over the right shoulder of the Rashad West that you're seeing now, in front of that graffiti wall. And that's where the two officers, the two rookie officers, not only rookies, they haven't even been at the job for a week, came, approached him, and put him under arrest, basically. So let's tell the story of Rashad West and why I think he should be considered a hero and so many others. For Minneapolis restaurant owner Rashad West, 2019 was the absolute best year. Business at his Dragon Walk restaurant, a Southside Minneapolis Asian restaurant, was booming. You see, after 4 years, Rashad's takeout joint was outgrowing its modest 1,100 square feet. This was when fate struck and put the 30-year-old Rashad West in position to make history. Not business history, explicit black history. A neighboring proprietor, looking to retire, offered Rashad the opportunity to move Dragon Walk a few blocks east, down 38th Street, from Nicollet to Chicago Ave. The new real estate tripled his space and enabled him to offer a new service, which was indoor dining. In January, he moved into his new premises. His doors opened in early March 2020. Then, COVID-19 and the coronavirus hit Minneapolis. Unlike many Americans, Rashad didn't panic. His concern ran towards the community first and his business second. He said, "I was thinking that I didn't want the Minneapolis economy to collapse. Also, if there are no jobs, then there's no money. And if there's no money, there's not going to be any takeout." Fortunately, Dragon Walk Restaurant had built its name on exceptional customer relations. A customer by the name of Ashley Muller said, "If you've been there more than once, they treat you like family." If any local spot was built to withstand the national pandemic, it was Rashad's Dragon Walk. And that's not even taking into account the food. While a menu featuring Kung Pao chicken and curried Singapore noodles normally doesn't appear in a black-owned restaurant, Rashad swears his boasts the best lo mein and the fried rice in all of the 50 states in the whole of the United States. Like many African Americans, he assumed the coronavirus would be his biggest obstacle in 2020. And it might have been, until a surreal pairing of quarantine and technology changed everything. Not long after the footage of the killing of Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia spread across the country, a Minneapolis police officer killed George Floyd on Memorial Day Monday, sparking an inferno of demonstrations and unrest. And it happened practically on Rashad West's doorstep. On May 25th, Memorial Day, Monday, for nearly 9 minutes, former Officer Derek Chauvin's knee pinned George Floyd's neck into the Chicago Avenue concrete tarmac. George Floyd had been apprehended and arrested minutes before, directly in front of Rashad's Dragon Walk restaurant, for allegedly giving a teenager clerk at the neighboring Cup Foods grocery store a counterfeit $20 bill. Dragon Walk's operational hours were still abbreviated at the time because of the virus and the lockdown. And on that particular terrible Monday, it was Memorial Day Monday. The restaurant was closed. Rashad had no idea what had happened across the street from his restaurant. The next morning, he received a flurry of text messages and phone calls about somebody dying across the street from his restaurant. The death, he heard, was a result of the perpetrator resisting arrest. His landlord at the Dragon Walk encouraged Rashad to to check the security surveillance camera that's on the corner of the street. He took a look. The footage showed an extremely distressed but consistently compliant George Floyd. He debunked any rumors of Floyd's resistance to arrest and revealed that he was, in Rashad's words, not treated like a human being. Rashad was disgusted. Witnessing the final moments of George Floyd's life ignited a single question from within himself. Why does this keep happening to us? I'm like, here we go again. This whole narrative about this man fighting with police and doing this and that, and none of that was true. He hadn't yet watched the original footage of Chauvin killing George Floyd that was captured by a bystander, Darnell Fraser, and posted on Facebook and spread all over the world. He didn't know that Fraser's video started long into the encounter, and that his own surveillance camera would be the first to directly contradict the officer's statement and the police department's statement that George Floyd had physically resisted arrest. Regardless, he felt it was his duty to make his findings public. Rashad said, I didn't want people throwing dirt on this man's name about what he might have been doing. For once, I had an opportunity to put a stop to the BS. When West was younger, he'd been pulled over by Minnesota police for driving a BMW M3 while young, black, and successful. He says, I knew they just wanted to see how I would react. Before that, he hadn't had any negative incidents with local law enforcement at all. He was an ambitious teenager who managed to juggle 2 jobs and a 4-year scholarship to play cornerback at St. Cloud State University. He was a sneakerhead since he was 10 years old. He transferred his passion for sneakers into his work. After climbing the managerial ladder at Finish Line in the Mall of America, he was offered stores in Milwaukee or North Dakota to run. The opportunity came with an ultimatum, though. Leave his second job, which was as a cook at the southern Minneapolis Chinese-Cambodian restaurant called Hot Wok. He made a decision. He gave up the job at Finish Line and turned down the opportunity to be a manager. Before entering the restaurant business, Rashad has 0 experience in the kitchen. In fact, his favorite food was and still is pizza. Yet the culinary and hospitality trade seems to spark something inside him that sneakers and football never had. There were practical considerations too. His girlfriend and future wife, Ashley, was expecting their first son. He says, I didn't see myself having a 9-to-5 job. I just knew I had this kid coming, and the lifestyle that I wanted to required me to build a financial freedom. Ashley West, his wife, is a social worker of Cambodian descent. The two have been together for 14 years. It was Ashley who first worked as a front-of-the-house hostess and manager at the Hot Wok restaurant. The owner there took a liking to West and asked Rashad if he was scared of fire. Then he told him how to build a business with a wok. His wife says Rashad was just born with an entrepreneurial personality. That personality was bred and continuously fostered by his New Yorker parents. His mother was a childhood development scholar from Queens. His dad was an entrepreneur and Air Force veteran from Staten Island. Before retiring, both his parents raised their only son to think tirelessly like a boss. Although their household classified as upper middle class, the West saw that status as something they had achieved, what wasn't automatically granted to their children. Rashad says they would always say, "We worked our asses off to get you to where you are now. Now you need to figure out what you're going to give to yourself." His mother was notorious for making the young Rashad rewrite entire school papers if his handwriting wasn't legible. This taught him to economize time by executing with pace and patience. His father required Rashad to earn everything he wanted. When he asked for a PlayStation and his dad got it for him, the new console stayed on top of the fridge until he had completed enough chores to match its value. He remembers by saying, "I'll be like Dad. I've been cutting the grass and washing the dishes for a week." And he would say, "I know, but this thing cost me $200. You got a long ways to go to earn it back, kid." After Rashad had worked a few full-time years at the Hot Wok restaurant, his boss and mentor announced that he was going to retire and suggested Rashad open his own place. Remembering how much his mother stressed fully committing to your goals, Rashad sold off his rare sneaker collection. Stocked with Solar, Red October, Galaxy, and damn near every Jordan, the collection made him $18,000. Enough for Rashad, who was 24 years old at the time, to make a down payment on his very own business. Today, it appears that Rashad's purpose wasn't solely cooking up Asian cuisine and modeling a successful black-owned business. It was assisted in the defanging of police departments whose practices so frequently devalue black lives. The move made him the savior that Emmett Till, Sandra Bland, and so many other African Americans did not have before their unjust and untimely deaths. He says, "The only reason I put that video out was to preserve the truth. I know how that can get twisted." You can hear in his voice how much he hated being lied to about George Floyd's death by the statement from the police that said George Floyd resisted arrest. Yet, before he could do his part, he had to first speak with his wife. His wife says, "I was really shaken up. I knew that he was doing the right thing. My concern was how the world would respond to it. Sometimes when you're doing the right thing, you have a percentage of people who would say otherwise. That percentage of people got drowned out for a spell." Once Rashad posted the video to his Facebook page, and then he gave the Washington Post a copy after receiving a promise from them that they wouldn't alter the footage. Then the city of Minneapolis took over, putting their collective anger into riotous action. It set Minneapolis ablaze for the rest of the week before sending a wildfire into every single so-called United States. Although the 4 officers involved were fired the day after the killing, enraged locals still burned down the 3rd Precinct station. Civilians from St. Paul to Minneapolis torched fast food and retail chains, destroying several gas stations, including the one right across the street from the Dragon Walk. Rashad says, "I knew people were fed up, but I didn't know it would get that crazy." Although his wife's anxiety was sky high, Rashad knew the decision wasn't about him. Nor was it solely about today or yesterday. More than anything, he didn't want his 2 young sons to grow up in a world that resembled 2020. He said, "Maybe this will make it easier for my kids to walk the streets 15 years down the line without having to change the way they behave when they see members of the law enforcement fraternity." Officer Chauvin and his squad mates have their defenders, of course. Some are invested in maintaining a corrupt culture of policing. Others are obsessed with preserving racial supremacy. And since making the video public, Rashad has received his share of anonymous threats. While admittedly he's concerned, he isn't talking much about the subject, nor is he surprised by the backlash. He says, people who've clouded judgment or are morally sick can't understand that this isn't anything that should be debated. Black men need to stop being killed in the streets, flat out. Speaking up and showing out for both human and civil rights isn't without its dangers, especially when you're being quoted by the New York Times and appearing on CNN tonight. Newfound notoriety can make the unforgiving job of resisting evil and imperialism even more hazardous. Many have been harmed or worse because they were on the right side of the fight. Yet, Rashad stands so firm in his responsibility as a black man that his fear renders him more cautious than scared. He says, I know once I put my face out there and stood for something, there will be people on the other side. So I'm just prepared to protect myself, my family, and all my employees at all costs. Today, Rashad West is emotionally exhausted. His contribution to the aftermath of the George Floyd killing has been, quote, the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with as a businessman. In a place of his normally upbeat disposition is a fresh solemnness. His usual warm smile is less frequent these days, according to his friends. The woman who was his customer and said they treat you like family said it's going to be a long time until Rashad can take time off and really process all of this. It's at the forefront of his mind every single day. When he's not slammed with work at the Dragon Walk, he strolls George Floyd's memorial observing the visitors who are there. Once in a while, he'll whip up a dish for a homeless neighbor. Those who live nearby know him. The ones who come from further away are unfamiliar with the young entrepreneur turned 2020 hero. They're oblivious to the fatigue in his brown eyes or his heavy shoulders, weighed with the hope that his video helps condemn the men who killed George Floyd. He says there's no way a jury shouldn't give this man and his family justice. As far as evidence goes, it's black and white. Rashad West, a hero who took a risk by doing the right thing, but he knew it was the right thing to do. He's had threats. His business is still suffering because of the shutdown, probably. And who knows what's going to happen to it, the way things are going in this country. So, remember the name, Rashad West. May he stay protected. God bless him and his family. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Be safe. Enough love.
The dark brown shade of my skin only adds color to my tears. Oh, that splashed against my hollow bone that rocks my soul. Looking back over my false dreams that I once knew, wondering why my blacker dreams will never come true. Is it because I'm black? Somebody tell me. What can I do? Oh, something is holding me back. Is it because I'm black?